This video is brought to you by Sporlan, quality, integrity, and tradition.
Alright, we're working on a HVACR refrigeration rack today. We've got a leaking receiver back there. It's a fairly new receiver too, but it's leaking at the valve and it's not repairable. So we are in the process of changing it. So we've got I've got a technician downstairs too, and he's leak checking all the evaporators just to make sure since we're here. So if we find any leaks, we'll braze on those too. But in the process, I'm getting ready to recover the charge. I've got a Freshie recovery tank. It was actually pressurized, brand new, and it's full of moisture. Look at that vacuum pump oil. That's the second time I've changed the oil. So I'm gonna get my micron gauge on that guy. I thought it was just gonna be a quick pull down, but you gotta make sure when you're using recovery tanks that they are evacuated properly, because that one is full of moisture and you can clearly see it in the vacuum pump oil with how cloudy it is. So always be careful. I had to step up my game a little bit, so I got a large diameter hose on there, got the micron gauge on the tank. It's currently standing at 931. Let's go ahead and finish pulling this guy down. So we're pulling through the large diameter. We'll do another oil change here in a few minutes. On the plus side, you can do the on-the-fly oil changes on this pump. So this is my bad oil container. That's what I do, is I'll just pour the bad oil back into the empty pint and then fill from these ones. And the cool thing is you got the extra little container, so you can just keep doing swaps on it. It's like completely clouded up again, really bad. So we're gonna go ahead and do an oil change. So while it's running, it doesn't lose the evacuation. Just open that, it drains into here, and then just pour the oil right back in the top to the fill level, and you're good to go. Put the top back on it. Gotta love the on-the-fly oil change, right? While I'm waiting for the evacuation on the tank, I'm doing everything I can to get ready. So I've kind of got the recovery machine hooked up. I'll have to get my other large diameter hose coming out of it. And then I came over here. The receiver's gonna get replaced. So I've got it sanded up right here, right here, right here. We'll undo it. We've got it sitting on a stand, so it'll be easy. On the old ones, they're bolted through, and that kind of stinks because you can't get to the bolts. So that's why we came up with the stand idea. But yeah, so just try to stay moving. That way we're not wasting time. Finally, after I'm in decay right now, so I shut it off and it's just using the blue one's closed. But oil's finally staying clear. Now the light's kind of throwing you guys off. Let's see, that's completely full of bad oil. So I think there's 3.5 in there. And then there's another 1.5 in there. So almost 5 oil changes. It's crazy, but yeah, you gotta watch this stuff. So now we can actually get back to the job and recover the gas. We are set up. Everything's hooked up. I left this loose right here. We're gonna slowly crack this guy. And there you go. We're letting it purge. We're purging all the air out of the lines. That's pretty good. All right. Now we're nice and snug. Everything's open. We're completely open here. Notice I put a large diameter hose here and a large diameter hose going there. So those are 3/8 diameter hoses. Speed up the process. We're in recover. Scale is zeroed out. All right, this is the new SR47 scale from Fieldpiece. They redesigned it. It's a little more ergonomic, has handles. Pretty cool, and they increased the weight limitation on it. All right, let's go ahead and hit start on the recovery machine. And we are off to the races. We're just weighing the amount of refrigerant to make sure we don't overfill this tank. Now this is a 30-pound cylinder. Do the math, and I believe it's somewhere around 21 pounds, I think, of 404 or something like that. I'll just make sure I don't go over 20, and I know I'll be good. What happened here? Oh, well, you got to be smarter than the average bear. I just proved that it has a high pressure cutout. I didn't open this. My bad. That's why they build safeties, for idiots like me. All right, so I'm gonna start it back up, and now you're actually recovering the proper way. Hey, on the plus side, I guess that's a good advertisement for the MR45 with the pressure control. This guy has known refrigerant leaks, so we can't recover into a vacuum because we're gonna be reusing this refrigerant. So I shut it off at about 1 psi on each side, then went ahead and switched over to the purge mode, pumped all the refrigerant I could into the tank. So altogether 10 pounds, 13 ounces that we'll reuse because there's nothing wrong with it. And then we'll just add the extra refrigerant on top of that. So this guy is done. I open these guys to atmosphere. We'll get a nitrogen purge going on them, and then we'll get going to town putting in the new receiver. Got the receiver out. We're gonna unbraze this. Yeah, turned out nice. We'll clean this up, silver solder that back in. The new receiver's identical, so we'll mark it and everything. Alright, we're going to do this joint because it's kind of tucked back behind. So we cleaned it up. We put silver solder paste flux on there. We're using 56% silver solder, and we're going to braze it on real quick. Alright, it's not perfect, but it'll do. It's good. A little bit of overflow, nice little gob right there. That's about $5 worth of silver. But, nah, it's good. If I had paint, I would paint this because this just rusts out, but I don't got any, so. All right, we're gonna get it put in there and get the other one done. All right, so I gotta try to position myself up in here where I can push down on this because we need it to go into the pipe while we're heating it. Okay, there we go. Now apply silver solder. Move the heat. There you go. Apply it around the backside. Move the heat. Now take your heat and point it from the back forward without burning me. There you go. You've got enough silver solder on there. Just keep heating it, heating it. You got it. Now draw it down into the fitting from the other side. You got plenty of solder, plenty of heat. We're good. Okay. So we're gonna let it cool, turn it off and hit me with the oxygen, lightly. Okay, we're good. Now we need to get some 15% and do this joint, and there's a possibility it could pop on us, so just be ready. So I will apply pressure from the bottom while you're doing that. That way it doesn't pop on us. around, you got more than enough solder. Just bring it all around, it'll draw all the way. More than enough, bring it around the back corner. The heat, there you go. Plenty of solder. Pretty good. Alright. Should be good to go. I'm gonna hold it for a sec, we'll cool it off with the oxygen, then we'll change the dryer. Dryer's right there. So you can see that I marked the liquid level just at the 3/4 mark. Okay, we know that's how the old one was marked. We're all brazed in. One thing I didn't address is that I loosened the packing and the stem is in the middle position and loose. You always want them loose when you're brazing because I've seen them get stuck before. So again, we're gonna get in here and change this dryer real quick and then we'll get the evacuation running. All right, went ahead and changed the Sportland catch-all. We use a flare dryer so that way if we ever have to make just like evaporator repairs or something, you don't got to come up with your torches. Now this, we're doing a high side repair. We had to recover, change the receiver, that's inevitable. But normally you're just fixing leaks on evaporators or changing power heads, and so a flare valve I find is really awesome. So we got that, the micron gauge is all on. We're gonna come over here and get this guy started up. We're all hooked up right here, high and low side, we're opened up. We just need to plug in the vacuum pump. Got the vacuum pump plugged in, gas ballast open, and we're off to the races, pulling this guy down right now. So we'll let it run until about 2,000, 1,500 microns with the gas ballast open, and then we'll close it and finish the evacuation. Well, that's looking pretty good, 462 microns. Slowly still dropping. We actually are in decay right now, but it's just got kind of a delayed reaction. So, all right, well, we're gonna get ready to charge this guy up. Now, as far as charging goes, on the last receiver I marked 18 pounds, so we're just gonna weigh in the 18 pounds. I think I got about 10 from this. If, you know, we'll see how much we get out of it, and then we got another drum to top it off to get it to the 18 pounds. Now, we'll know with the 18 pounds, that'll be more than enough gas for the head pressure control valve to flood the condenser properly. So, all right, we got the scale zeroed out. One more time. Okay, we're zeroed out, hooked up to the liquid. I purged all the way up to every one of these before I open the valves, and then now we're going to charge on the high side and dump as much of this gas into the high side as possible. That scared me, but I have it shut off, and I also disconnected the compressor plug, so there's no way it could start running. All right, so we are running. So we're just putting as much gas into the high side as possible, slowly coming up on the low side, that's fine. And then once we get as much as we can in there, then we'll turn it on and charge the rest through the low side while it's running. All right, took about just under 8 pounds. So let's go ahead and flip this guy on. See what happens here. We are running, and we're just gonna go ahead and start metering it in through the low side. Again, we're trying to get to the 18 pounds. We've got a sight glass that is flashing right there, okay? Compared, well, you can't really see too well, but yeah, it's clearly flashing. Let me try to zoom in for you. So the liquid's violently running through it right now. So we're just gonna keep charging until there's nothing left in this cylinder. And then once we figure that out, we'll change over to that one and finish topping it off. Looking good so far. We got 10 pounds of gas out of this guy. So then we'll switch over and get another 8 out of this one. And we should be good. I have a technician downstairs too, because he said that one of the evaporator fan motors wasn't working. So he's currently changing that. They've got 2 evaporator coils on this system. So he's changing that fan motor out, and I'm just charging it up. All right, everything is put away. Gauges are taken off. The system is coming down in temp. Sight glass is clear, nice and good. Okay, so remember that being clear means that it's a solid column of liquid at that point in the system. Another thing to understand too is if a system's completely void of refrigerant, if it's just vapor, the sight glass can look like that too. So it requires you to actually put service gauges on and check to make sure. Typically on a system like this, your condensing temp over ambient is going to be somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees. So if your condensing temp over ambient is approximately 20 to 30 degrees over the actual outside air temperature or the saturation temp, then it's a pretty good sign that and the sight glass is clear. Then the indications are that it's actually clear and it's not just an empty sight glass. I know that's kind of confusing, but once you start working in it, it'll make sense if it doesn't already. So everything's tight. We're gonna put all the panels on and go downstairs and have a look inside the box. All right, we are running. The box is pretty much at temp. I think that thermometer says in the 30s. So this guy right here says 37 degrees, so that's a plus. We're looking good.
It's kind of funny how, you know, you can make the simplest of mistakes. You can be an experienced mechanic and make mistakes, okay? It's how you learn from them, right? And you kind of learn to laugh about them in a way that you don't take them for granted, right? Because I made a mistake, and, you know, if you keep making that mistake, I'm talking about the recovery machine, right? And not having the tank valve open. Like, if you keep making that mistake, yeah, there's potential I could damage my recovery machine, right? But no harm, no foul. The MR45 recovery machine has a high pressure control built into it. It cut it off. I was a little confused at what was going on at first, but then I found it, okay? And, you know, I can laugh it off now, but I learned from it, right? But, you know, sometimes you can just get caught up in things and like, oh yeah, I forgot to open up that valve. And in editing the video, I'm watching it and I'm like, come on, dummy, come on, open it up. Nope, there you go. You know, get to watch myself repeat the mistakes over and over again, right? Flashback to the beginning of the video though, and it's really important to make sure if you have a brand new recovery cylinder, right, you need to make sure, and even the recovery cylinders, because I don't know how your supply houses work, but my supply houses, I have an exchange program, okay? So I take a recovery cylinder that has gas in it, whether it's full or just has a couple pounds in it. I take it in, I drop it off, and they give me a new tank. Now, sometimes it's a brand new tank that's pressurized. Sometimes it is a tank that's in a vacuum, okay? Now, my particular system, if it's a pressurized tank, you have to make sure you pull an evacuation on it. You let the, or it's not refrigerant that's in there, it's usually nitrogen. I hope it's nitrogen, right? You let the nitrogen out, and then you pull a vacuum on it, okay? But judging by the amount of moisture in there, it kind of makes me wonder if they pressurize them with air, because that thing was clearly dirty, right? So, but then if I get a tank when I'm doing a swap, if they give me one that's plastic wrapped, that typically means that it's vacuumed down. So I still have ways, you still got to check to make sure that it actually is vacuumed down, because if the tank was to have a leak at the manifold or the valve handles or something like that, you would think it's vacuumed down, and then you put potentially good refrigerant in there. Now, in this situation, I am taking a risk, I'm taking a gamble in that it's moisture free when it's vacuumed down. Okay, because there is the risk if you run into this problem a lot, which I actually don't. I've gotten several pressurized tanks from this particular supply house that I get them from, and I haven't ran into this problem before where it was full of moisture. Okay, so but you know, sometimes stuff happens, whatever. So just be cautious and make sure you understand what's going on. Now, in this situation, I was going to reuse the refrigerant, okay, trying to save my customer a few bucks. Now, I know there's going to be people out there, and I get these comments quite often where people are like, how come you're, you know, you're potentially risking bad refrigerant? You know, what if that refrigerant's bad? You're going to, you know, you're selling a box of rocks to the customer. Who knows? Okay. No, like, slow down. Okay. I'm the only person that works on this restaurant. That refrigerant's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay. You know, another question I get actually that I should address right now too is how come I don't put a filter dryer when I'm recovering the refrigerant? Okay. If I think that the refrigerant is contaminated, then I will put a filter dryer, but I'm not going to waste a filter dryer every single recovery job because they cost money. I'm a business owner. We're looking at expenses, okay? Now, if I'm coming up to a new customer and I've never worked with them before, I don't know the company that was doing their work before them, yeah, I'm probably going to go ahead and start running filter dryers on my recovery machines again. But I do repetitive work for a lot of the same customers. I'm the only person working on them for the most part. I'm not too worried about that, okay? So I don't always run a filter dryer on my recovery setups. But I will tell you that on the Field Piece vacuum pump, there is a strainer. I think there is. Isn't there a strainer? Or am I thinking of the Appion vacuum pump or recovery machine? I don't know. I'll have to see, actually, now that I think about it. I know the Appion one used to have a little strainer built into the inlet port I can't remember if the field piece one does or not. That's something I need to think about as I'm vocalizing it, talking out loud, right, and listening to myself. But still, if I, am concerned about the refrigerant, then I'll throw a filter dryer on there. Okay. So we went through the job. We pulled out the receiver. It's a fairly new receiver, 1.5 years, 2 years old, something like that. But it's leaking. Okay. That's what happens when they don't have rotolock valves. You can't just change the valve. It's harder and harder to get them. And I'm not going to, bust my butt. It's not very often that you have a receiver that fails for this reason. Just make sure you're loosening that packing when you're opening and closing those things, the king valve on the receiver, right? So going through it, you did see me start some of the brazing, but then you also saw me let someone else do some of the brazing. I was kind of educating as we were going through there, but it was just pretty much a textbook, refrigeration repair. We fixed the parts, we brazed it back in. We did have to use silver solder. Now I use 56% silver solder on dissimilar metals. So copper to steel, steel to steel, brass to copper, brass to steel. I'm going to use 56% silver solder. If I'm doing copper to copper brazing, I'm going to use 15% Silphos, okay? Silphos has phosphorus built into it. You don't have to do any kind of a fluxing agent because the phosphorus acts as a flux already when you're heating it up. It cleans the joint. So that's what we use when we're brazing, okay? I don't really substitute anything else. I don't use any of the low temperature solders unless I'm doing plumbing, right? If I'm just doing plumbing line, then I'll use the tin solder with just the regular paste flux or whatever. But if I'm doing silver solder, you're going to use the silver solder flux. You got to make sure there's a difference there because it's going to change everything up, okay? To each their own. Some people like to use different solders. That's just what I use. I've always done it that way, okay? I always braze with an oxyacetylene rig. I don't use a B-tank or a turbo torch. And again, no offense to anybody that does, to each their own. I've just always used oxygen and acetylene when I'm brazing, okay? So we put that in, we pulled the evacuation on the system, started it back up, and all was well. Nothing too crazy about this job, right? I really appreciate you making it to the end. It's amazing all the support that I get from all of you guys. Leave me some feedback down in the YouTube comments. Let me know what you think. Do me a favor, if you think there's some value in this video, share it. Share this video on your social media platform. Share it with your friends. Help to grow the channel. That'd be amazing. If you're interested, check out my website, hvacrvideos.com. Some merchandise available on there if you want to help support the channel. There's a couple other ways to help support the channel if you're interested in doing so. PayPal, Patreon, YouTube channel memberships. There's links in the show notes of this video from YouTube on how to help support via those platforms. Also, if you want to purchase any tools, check out a website called TrueTechTools.com. And if you like what they have to offer, I have an offer code, big picture, one word. That'll get you an 8% discount on almost all the items on their website. And when you use that offer code, I get a small commission. Helps to support my channel. Doesn't cost you anything extra. You still get to use your discount. So check it out. Again, I really appreciate you guys. Remember to be kind to one another. You never know what someone else is going through. Not justifying someone being a jerk, but you just never know, right? The person on the other end of that rude comment they just made could be just having the worst day of their life, okay? So sometimes it's easier just to let it blow off, right? Just brush it off your shoulder and just move on, okay? Just remember, people can be going through crazy things, and we as humans are really good at trying to conceal our emotions, but oftentimes when we try to suppress things, it comes out in other forms, right? Via being rude to someone else. So again, not justifying rude behavior, but just remember, okay, you don't have to, be a jerk back to them. Again, kill them with kindness, right? So anyways, I really appreciate you all. Be kind to one another, and we will catch you on the next one, okay?